Wilson, one of the original Supremes, accused Diana Ross of stealing the spotlight from the rest of the group. She also expressed other very bitter complaints about Diana Ross.
When Florence started having these problems, and it wasn't her fault, she was actually abused. It absolutely just took everything out of her. I mean, and Diana and I, first of all, didn't know what was going on because we didn't hear from her like for about 2 weeks.
Did you know that Diana Ross, now 80 years old, has finally shared some dark secrets about the Supremes? What really happened behind the scenes of this famous group? Why did Diana stay silent for so long? What struggles did she face with her fellow members? Can these shocking truths change how we see the Supremes today? Let's dive into Diana's story and the mysteries she has revealed.
Gals who had 3 #1 songs in 1964, singing one of them, Baby Love. Welcome again, the Supremes.
The Supremes, one of the most famous girl groups in music history, started with a girl named Florence Ballard who lived in Detroit. Florence loved singing and soon met 2 guys named Paul Williams and Eddie Kendricks. They were part of a local singing group called the Primes. When the Primes manager, Milton Jenkins, heard that Florence and Paul's girlfriend, Betty McGlown, could both sing, he thought it would be a good idea to start a sister group. This new group would be called the Primettes. Florence was excited about this and asked her best friend Mary Wilson to join.
She was like the Etta James or the Aretha Franklin kind of singer because she had so.
Paul Williams also asked another local girl named Diana Ross to join the group.
She asked me if I wanted to join the group, and I said, yeah, you know. So she said, well, they're going to ask Diane. You know Diane? I'm like, yeah, she lives right across the street.
With these 4 girls, the Primettes were born. Milton Jenkins became their mentor and helped them get started. The group performed at local events like sock hops, social clubs, and talent shows. People loved hearing them sing songs by famous artists like Ray Charles and the Drifters. They also got some advice from a songwriter named Jesse Greer, which helped them get better quickly and build a small fan base in Detroit. The Primettes had a fun, young style. They were inspired by the clothes worn by a famous doo-wop group called Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. Florence, Diana, and Mary took turns singing lead vocals on different songs. Their hard work paid off when they won a big talent contest at the Windsor-Detroit International Freedom Festival. Winning this contest gave them more confidence, and they decided they wanted to make a record. They hoped to sign with Motown, a new record label in Detroit. Diana Ross reached out to Smokey Robinson, a local singer from a group called The Miracles, who she knew from her neighborhood. Smokey liked the Primettes and agreed to help them. He even brought in Marvin, a talented guitarist, but he ended up hiring Marvin for his own group, The Miracles. Smokey then arranged for the Primettes to audition for Berry Gordy, the head of Motown. However, Berry Gordy thought the girls were too young and needed more experience. He told them to come back after they graduated from high school. Even though this was a setback, the girls didn't give up. Berry Gordy did let them help out with background vocals and other small jobs for other artists. This gave them some experience and allowed them to get to know the Motown team. Finally, after months of persistence, Berry Gordy agreed to sign them in January 1961, but he wanted them to change their name. He suggested several names, and Florence chose the Supremes. From that moment, the Supremes began their journey to stardom, becoming one of the most successful and influential groups in music history. The Supremes struggled to get a hit song. Between 1961 and 1963, they released 6 singles, including songs like I Want a Guy,
As long as he treats me right,
and Buttered Popcorn.
I said a kiss on me, please.
Unfortunately, none of these songs became popular, and they didn't make it onto the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Around the studio, people jokingly called them the No-Hit Supremes. To stay involved and make a living, the group continued doing small jobs at Motown, like providing backup vocals for Marvin Gaye and the Temptations.
But not a word did he say. He just stood there kind of.
So big changes started to happen for the Supremes when they released a song called When the Love Light Starts Shining Through His Eyes. and it became their first hit. It reached number 23 on the Billboard Hot 100. This was their first song written by a famous group of songwriters at Motown called Holland Dozier Holland. Around this time, Berry Gordy, the head of Motown, decided that Diana Ross would be the lead singer of the Supremes, and she would stay in that role as the group grew more popular. In 1964, the Supremes recorded a song called Where Did Our Love Go?, which was originally written for another group. At first, the group didn't like the song, but their producers convinced them to record it. To everyone's surprise, the song became a huge success. It went all the way to number 1 on the US pop charts in August 1964. It also reached number 3 in the United Kingdom. After this big hit, the Supremes released even more successful songs. Their next 4 singles, Baby Love, Come See About Me, Stop, In the Name of Love, and Back in My Arms Again, all hit number 1 in the United States. Baby Love was also a number 1 hit in the UK and even got nominated for a Grammy Award. These hits made the Supremes one of the biggest and most loved groups in America, with Diana Ross leading the way.
We had just started singing. I think we were like now by that maybe 13 or 14 years old, and Florence was abused by a neighborhood guy there.
Now Florence was once a happy and lively girl who loved being with her bandmates, Mary and Diana. But one day, without any warning or explanation, she suddenly left the group. This left Mary and Diana heartbroken, watching everything they had worked for begin to fall apart.
We're like, and then we would call over there where our parents wouldn't let us talk to her or anything, and we couldn't figure out what was going on.
What they didn't know was that something terrible had happened to Florence. She had been hurt by someone she trusted, and this event changed her completely. It all started in the summer of 1960 when Florence went to a dance at Detroit's Greystone Ballroom. She had gone there with her brother Billy, but they got separated in the crowd. Later that night, Florence was walking home alone in the dark. A young man who she thought she recognized from the news offered her a ride. This man was Reggie Harding, a local basketball player. But instead of taking Florence home, he drove her to an empty parking lot and attacked her with a knife. For weeks, Florence shut herself off from everyone, staying in her room and avoiding her friends, including Mary and Diana. When they finally reached out to her, she told them what had happened. Mary and Diana were very sorry for her, but they didn't understand why Florence had changed so much. She had been strong, happy, and full of energy before, but now she seemed sad, quiet, and often angry for no reason. Florence never talked about the attack again. She was never the same, and her friends could only wonder what had really happened to their once bright bandmate.
And for her to sit there and tell us what had happened to her almost was just too much to bear, you know.
Yeah.
And to see that something could happen to our friend, and you could see that she was no longer the girl that she was.
That Dorothy Dandridge glamour, okay? And Dorothy Dandridge and Lena Horne, that was the it for us, you know. And she had that look.
Also, Florence was unhappy with how things were going. She felt that Motown Records, the company that ran the Supremes, was paying too much attention to Diana Ross. It seemed like Diana was getting all the spotlight, while the other members, including Florence, were being left out. This made Florence upset and caused tension between her and the people at Motown, as well as with the other members of the group. As the pressure from being famous grew, Florence started to feel sad and struggled with her emotions. She began to drink heavily, which only made things worse. Sometimes she would miss shows or recording sessions because of her drinking. Motown had to bring in Marlene Barrow from another group to fill in for Florence during shows. Then in April 1967, Cindy Birdsong was brought in to replace Florence temporarily. Florence came back to the group a month later, but things weren't the same. She didn't know it, but her time with the Supremes was about to end. On July 1st, just after her 24th birthday, she performed at a hotel in Las Vegas. She was drunk, and her performance was not good. Her movements were unsteady, and her outfit didn't fit right. This upset Berry Gordy, the boss of Motown, and he sent Florence back home to Detroit. Cindy Birdsong then officially replaced her in the group. After leaving the Supremes, Florence married Tommy Chapman, who worked as Berry Gordy's chauffeur. But even after getting married, her struggles didn't end. Her drinking problems and emotional struggles continued. She often wore too much makeup and kept sunglasses on, even inside because she felt insecure. Florence tried to take breaks and focus on getting better, but she kept going back to her old habits. Once, she even drank before a performance, and it was clear that she wasn't able to perform well. Berry Gordy then asked her to leave the group for good, and that was the end of her time with the Supremes.
It was not easy because to see Diane moving on and to see Florence, her whole, not just her life, I mean her soul. Florence's soul was totally, it was tortured.
After leaving the Supremes, Florence Ballard got a settlement of $160,000. However, part of the deal was that she couldn't talk about her time with the group. She signed a new contract with ABC Records, hoping for a fresh start in her music career. She even gave her money to a lawyer to help with her finances and started a management company with her husband. Unfortunately, her husband didn't know much about managing her career, and soon Florence was performing in small clubs and bars instead of big stages. By 1969, things were not going well for Florence. She was struggling with money, feeling deeply sad, and even refused to leave her home. She tried to sue Motown, believing Diana Ross had planned to push her out of the Supremes, but the court rejected her case. In an effort to pay her bills, she sold her jewelry, but when that didn't help enough, she had to move in with family and rely on social support. Fans of hers felt bad for her and sent letters to offer support. Florence's last performance was at a charity concert for a woman who had been jailed after defending herself. The audience gave her a standing ovation, showing how much they appreciated her. Later, Mary Wilson, one of the other Supremes, reached out to Florence and suggested she come back to the group. However, Florence was still very depressed and couldn't make it. Even though things were hard, there was a little hope for Florence when she received some money from a lawsuit. She was able to buy a new house and a car, but her struggles continued.
Supremes stood there looking down in the coffin at Florence. I mean, and there were probably no words to express the sadness that they both felt at what had occurred, yet they never spoke to each other.
But sadly, on February 21st, 1976, she passed away from a heart attack at just 32 years old. Her death shocked everyone. Thousands of people, including fans, friends, and family, came to her funeral to honor the woman who had once been a big name in music. Years later, Florence's family made a surprising discovery: 8 hours of interviews she had recorded shortly before her death. In these recordings, Florence spoke about feeling unsafe. This worried her family, especially her sister Maxine, who believed that something wasn't right about Florence's death. Maxine thought Florence might not have died naturally. Doctors said it was due to heart problems, but Florence didn't have a history of heart issues. There were no signs of alcohol or drugs in her body, but a strange brown substance was found, which was never identified. This made Maxine wonder if Florence had been silenced.
Just very sad, wishing that there was something that could have been done to make it not happen.
Florence. Diana Ross and Mary Wilson were once good friends, but their relationship took a bad turn.
Mary Wilson, one of the original Supremes, accused Diana Ross of stealing the spotlight from the rest of the group. She also expressed other very bitter complaints about Diana Ross.
They had a falling out, and it became clear things were not okay between them. On August 5th, 2000, Barbara Walters, a famous journalist, got an important call at ABC News in New York. It was Diana Ross on the phone, and she wanted to talk about an interview Mary Wilson did the day before. In that interview, Wilson said she was upset with Ross. She blamed Ross for ruining plans for a reunion tour for the Supremes. Ross spoke calmly but seriously when she talked to Walters. She said it made her sad to hear Wilson's words. She remembered how Wilson had been excited when Ross first suggested a reunion. But now everything had changed. Ross felt that no matter what they did, Wilson would never be happy. She also talked about how Wilson had been through a lot of pain, especially after losing her son in a car accident in 1994. Ross said, "She's been through a lot of pain. It seems like she's directing it at me."
I think the unhappiness came when things started not to work that well in her life. She's had a lot of difficulties. I think she's coming from a lot of pain, and a lot of times when you're unhappy, you have to find some place to throw that to. You know, she's targeting me, and I see.
In the interview, Wilson seemed really upset. She said Ross made a deal for the reunion tour where Ross would earn $15 to $20 million, while Wilson would only get $2 million or $3 million. She added that Cindy Birdsong, the other member of the Supremes, would make even less. Wilson said, "There's something about Diana. She wants everything for herself." In her book, Dream Girl, My Life as a Supreme, Mary Wilson shared her feelings about Diana Ross. She said that Diana was very ambitious and always wanted to be the star. When the Supremes became famous, Diana tried to make herself look more important than the other members. She would change her outfit before going on stage to stand out, and always made sure to stand in front during TV shows. Wilson also talked about Diana's relationship with Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown, who renamed the group Diana Ross and the Supremes. Wilson felt that Diana always wanted to be the center of attention. Wilson believed that Diana was very insecure, though. She said that Diana's confident attitude was just a way to hide her feelings of not being good enough. Wilson wrote that deep down, Diana felt she wasn't as pretty as the other girls. Diana wanted attention so badly that she sometimes came off as rude or mean. Things got worse when Diana reportedly flirted with Wilson's boyfriend. Wilson said this made it harder to ignore Diana's actions. In her book, she wrote, "Diana had a tendency to covet anything that belonged to anyone else." Overall, the relationship between Mary Wilson and Diana Ross was full of competition and jealousy. In 1970, Diana Ross made a big change. She decided to leave the Supremes, the famous group she had been part of for many years. Diana had helped the Supremes become one of the biggest groups of the 1960s with her strong voice and amazing stage presence. But she wanted more. Diana dreamed of making music on her own, without being part of a group. Leaving the Supremes was not easy. The group was like a family to her. They had shared many great moments together. But Diana knew that going solo would give her more freedom to pick her own songs and build her own name in music. Motown, the record company that worked with the Supremes, believed in Diana's talent. They knew she had what it took to be a solo artist. In 1970, Diana's first solo album came out. It was called Diana Ross and included the hit song, "Ain't No Mountain High Enough." The song became very popular and showed that Diana was ready to succeed on her own. Diana's solo career was more than just music. She also became an actress. She starred in the movie Lady Sings the Blues, where she played Billie Holiday, a famous jazz singer. Diana's big change to go solo proved she could do it all. But behind the glamour and success, her life hasn't always been easy. She's faced stress, exhaustion, heartbreak, and some personal struggles. The fast-paced life of performing and traveling took a toll on her. She opened up about the intense pressure and long hours she endured, especially during her busiest touring years. Diana admitted that sometimes the stress was so overwhelming that it affected her health. At one point, she couldn't even eat. She wrote that food would become repulsive to her, and her body seemed to reject it. Diana would put food in her mouth, but her jaw would clamp shut, and she couldn't chew. Diana Ross went through a lot in her career and personal life. The smell of food alone made her feel sick. This made her lose a lot of weight, and she became very thin and tired. It was tough on her body. She also remembered getting rashes before her shows. At that time, she and her group were performing up to 6 times a day. That's a lot for anyone, and she was under a lot of pressure from her boss, Berry Gordy, to keep working. She was scared that people would find out she wasn't good enough and that her career would end. This fear, along with the hard schedule, made her very stressed, but she kept going because she didn't want to fail. Diana also faced sadness in her personal life. Her brother Arthur and his wife, Patricia Ann Robinson Ross, were found dead in their home in 1996. They had been tied up and suffocated, and no one knew they had died until 2 or 3 weeks later. It was a big shock for Diana, and she talked about how much she loved her brother, saying, "I loved him very, very much." Losing him was a heartbreaking moment in her life. Despite everything, Diana kept moving forward, dealing with her challenges the best she could. Over the years, Diana also struggled with addiction. In 2002, at the age of 58, she was arrested for drunk driving. During the arrest, Diana couldn't walk in a straight line or say the alphabet correctly, leading to charges of extreme DUI, driving under the influence. She served 2 days in jail as part of her sentence, although there was some criticism because she served her time in short shifts rather than all at once. Later in 2002, Diana checked into a rehab center to deal with her issues with alcohol and drugs. There were few details shared about her time there, but it was reported that she had entered the facility voluntarily. Her official statement simply mentioned that she was there to clear up some personal issues. Diana's personal life had its ups and downs in her relationships too. She married Arne Næss, a Norwegian businessman and an experienced mountaineer. They were together for 13 years and had 2 sons. Even though they divorced in 2000, they still cared about each other. Sadly, in 2004, Arne died in a tragic mountain climbing accident. He had climbed Mount Everest before, but this time he was attempting a climb alone in the mountains near Cape Town, South Africa. The weather turned bad, and he lost his life in a fall. Diana and her sons were devastated by his death. After his funeral, Diana spoke about how difficult the time was for her family. She said, even though they were no longer married, losing Arne was a huge blow for Diana and her children. She shared a touching memory from the day they said their final goodbyes. The sun was shining, and a rainbow appeared in the sky, as if nature was giving them a moment of peace. Diana Ross was just 16 years old when she walked into the Motown offices, filled with excitement about her dream of becoming a star. Her boss, Berry Gordy, was the powerful man behind Motown, and Diana admired him. She thought he could help her make her dreams come true. But as Diana spent more time working with Berry, their professional relationship became complicated. Diana started to have feelings for Berry. The problem was, Berry was married. Even though he had a family, Diana didn't give up on her feelings. She stayed close to him, watching as he went through a hard marriage and had other affairs. Then, in 1965, after 5 years of working together, Diana and Berry started a secret love affair that changed everything.
Diana Ross.
Diana Ross she's class.
This story might seem like a typical one, where an older man takes advantage of a younger woman. But some people believe Diana was using her charm to get ahead in the music world. She was very ambitious and wanted to be a star, no matter what it took. Soon after their affair started, Diana found out she was pregnant with her first child, Rhonda. At the time, Diana was married to a man named Silberstein. They both knew that Berry was Rhonda's real father, but they decided to keep it a secret. Silberstein raised Rhonda as his own daughter and never told her the truth.
Reach out and touch somebody's hand, make it world red.
Rhonda grew up thinking Berry was just her uncle, not her dad. She said in an interview with the New York Post that she always felt like something was different. As she got older, she noticed she didn't look like her siblings, who were Silberstein's children. When Rhonda turned 13, Diana and Silberstein finally told her the truth about her father. The Supremes has made a huge impact on the music world. Their songs brought joy and helped break barriers for Black artists in pop music. Today, their legacy is still alive, and their star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame reminds everyone of their important role in music history.